Hello, welcome to 2L Pucks Hockey Chat. This is the January 1st edition, the first one of the new decade of 2020.
Yeah, Happy
So,
New Year.
Happy New Year to you, sir.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you and any of our loyal viewers. So,
Um,
welcome. Yeah.
and we are going to keep it light, nothing too crazy. But we're going to start off with. Would you like to start, sir? Would you like me to start?
Yeah, I can kick it off. The
Go
news of the
for it.
day.
Kick
The
it.
news of the day. Yeah, definitely going to kick it. So the news of the day, obviously, the only real news of the day has been was the Winter Classic, the NHL's attempt to market the game in an outdoor event.
Right.
85,000 fans down in Dallas, Texas, between Dallas and Nashville.
Right.
So, I've already kind of talked about my feeling on the outdoor games, and they're fun. Certainly they get a lot of people. The actually Nashville fans showed up. They were well represented with yellow in the stands. And we were taking down our Christmas decorations today, and I threw the game on the TV and watched the first period. And I have to say, it was probably one of the more intense outdoor games that's really ever been played.
Well,
That
that was
first
because of one dramatic moment, right?
Well, the first period had a lot of things that you may or may not have happened if it was a regular game. So, to your point, though, Corey Perry gets ejected for throwing an elbow at Ryan Ellis.
Yeah.
They get a 5-minute major in a game misconduct. And then you basically have 5 minutes. Dallas gets 5 minutes to score as many goals as they can. And then during that 5-minute power play, Nashville gets tagged for too many men, or excuse me, Dallas. Wow, man. So Dallas goes down a man for 5 minutes. Then Dallas goes down another man for delay of game. So Nashville was able to pop in 2 goals within a minute and a half of each other while in the power play, and we're up 2-0. So
Right.
something else was interesting there too. In the first period, there was a fight,
Yep.
and there was also a penalty shot. And so, I kind of look at this, and I hope that it really wasn't the case where the NHL decided to showcase as many calls or as
Yeah, a little bit
many
more
fun
yeah,
aspects.
over dramatize it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. So I'm hoping that wasn't the case. The penalty shot
Yeah.
I looked at and said, man, that guy definitely didn't have a clear line to the net. But
I mean, let's
uh,
face it, Corey
yeah,
Perry, I mean, he's not known to be a dirty player. But that
he's
hit
he's
was
got a history.
nasty.
He's got a history of being edgy. Um, but yeah, I don't know that I've seen him really do anything like that before.
Yeah.
It's funny too. The internet was basically, some folks are saying, okay, well, elbowing, 5-minute major game misconduct. Could there be supplemental discipline? What
Right.
was really funny was it took him, I think, 15 minutes to walk from the ice surface back to the locker room. And of course, he's being booed.
Yeah.
He's having to face
The
face
walk of
the
shame.
fans in the stands, the walk of shame. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see if anything comes from that. But they put on a great game. The ice was sticky
Yeah.
from what I was able to see, but they didn't really have to do too many repairs. And it's actually pretty it's a good showing for the NHL in that everything that they had done had basically been wiped out a week ago from torrential rains in
Right.
Dallas. So they really had to put things together again at the last minute. So again, the arena was packed. They had plenty of stuff representing Dallas and Texas on display, to include pig racing, with pigs that were named quite closely along the same names as some NHL players.
Hmm.
So they really tried to ham it up, so to speak, along with those pig races.
Oh,
Yes, I did it.
Scotty.
Yes,
Scotty.
yes. But all in all, good experience for the fans that were there. They did the handshake, which I thought was another interesting aspect. So the broadcasters on NBC said, "Oh, it's the traditional handshake," and I got to tell you, I've watched some outdoor games where the players were not so apt to go shake hands. One
Nor
team
should
left
they
the
be
ice.
on a regular season game where
Yeah,
there was dirty, some crazy stuff going on there.
Yeah. So end result though, Dallas was able to storm back, scored 4 unanswered goals. They won at home. So good for them, winning in their home rink. And the last thing to really talk about that was today it was announced that Minnesota will be getting next year's Winter Classic. So the state of hockey will get an outdoor game that's an officially NHL sanctioned outdoor game as opposed to being played on a lake or a pond. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the NHL did what it set out to accomplish. There's plenty of behind the scenes. There's blogs out there that the players kept up. Blake Como did some blogs for NHL.com, so I recommend if anybody wants to kind of get some insight as to the view from the hockey player standpoint, check that out. But yeah, I mean, set out to accomplish marketing the game, I guess.
Yeah.
They were successful in their endeavor as much as they could be, and it was the only game today. And so now, of course, everyone is wondering, what do you do on a night of the week where there's no hockey to watch? And so you tune into us, really,
Yes,
and you
exactly.
have a good time. Yeah.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Excellent, sir.
All right, kicking it back over to you.
All right. I'm going to take the ball and run with it here. Or take
Yeah.
the puck and skate it, I should say. Every year for those fantasy hockey people, you go through your draft, you have your top picks, and the season kicks off, and things seem normal for a little while, and it's the same thing every year until people start getting injured. Players get called up. Other players get opportunities on lines that they would otherwise not have that opportunity. And then all of a sudden you start to see these silent heroes emerging, and people who are starting to play out of their socks. So we're going to just talk about a few people that I feel maybe we should take a look at. All right, so there's a list, but I'm just going to go over three very quick.
All right.
From the Arizona Coyotes, this gentleman, Mr. Christian Dvorak, who plays both the center and left wing spot, has been playing on the top line with Taylor Hall. And he has an opportunity now. He's 23 years old. He's assisted on a goal on Sunday with Taylor, and he's been there. And this is a guy, as we know, anyone who gets a chance to get moved up or play with someone such as a Taylor Hall is someone to keep your eye on. So not only is he paired up, but he's paired up on the top line. Definitely keep your eyes on him. You're going to start seeing some point production from him in the near future. We'll see who's going to join him on the other side. Could be maybe Kessel or Connor Garland. It could be a couple people, but just the fact that he's going to be with Taylor Hall, I think, is enough to raise an eyebrow and just notate Christian Dvorak. Next person, Andre Palat. He's a winger, Tampa Bay. He is now skating on the top line with Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov. So he has 2 goals and 4 assists in 5 games. Now, I've seen with Tampa Bay over the last few years, they've experimented with everybody on the top line. I mean, everybody. You have Tyler Johnson on the top line. You got the other guy. Oh, I'm going to blank out. Yanni Gord on the top line. I mean, you got these guys that rotate onto the top line. Now you have Andre Palat. Braden Point wasn't always a top line guy either. So I think there's a little bit of a combination there, but there seems to be a little bit of chemistry, and Palat is now producing. And he's producing it with Point and Kucherov. So definitely keep an eye on him in the near future. That could be something to, noteworthy and something that could carry your team. Looking down the list, and obviously I definitely have to address it, but Mr. Tom Kuhnhackl of the New York Islanders has 2 points in his last 2 games. And that's due to, once again, he's playing top line with Liam Barzal due to injuries, which is just reshuffling of the lines. And Kuhnhackl's there, and he's had, since he's been on that top line, he's had 2 points. Good for him. He's a hard worker. You know, we could say he deserved the shot, but he's definitely seizing the opportunity, and we'll see how far this takes him. So definitely another player to keep an eye on.
Yeah, yeah.
Scott,
I want to throw a couple names out there
go for
for
it.
people to look at. So
Yeah.
the first one is Jake Gensel.
Yes.
So Jake Gensel, if you had him, drop him.
Yep.
He's not coming back in the regular season. He's just had shoulder surgery. Well, shouldn't say he just had shoulder surgery. He definitely had surgery. We think it was on his shoulder, but he's definitely out for months, not weeks. And so he was an NHL All-Star, 20 goals and something like 39 assists.
Yeah.
The guy was on a tear.
Yep.
It's not going to be available for the Penguins. So what does that mean? Well, a guy that I would pick up, at least for probably the next week to 2 weeks, is Alex Galchenyuk. So Galchenyuk started off in Montreal. Then he went to Arizona. And, of course, he went to Pittsburgh in the Phil Kessel trade. And Galchenyuk has been known to score in spurts. And he's not known for being consistent, except to be consistently inconsistent. That's the best way I can put it. So he hasn't, it's not from lack of effort, but he just hasn't been able to find the back of the net. And he was relegated to third and fourth line minutes. And for somebody who's supposed to be a natural goal scorer, he's, you don't do that on the third and fourth line, getting 7 or 8 minutes a night. So again, bringing it back, he's now been put on the top line with Evgeny Malkin and Brian Rust. So Galchenyuk has popped in 2 goals and has 3 points in the last 2 games. And he's going to be getting some power play minutes. He's going to be paired with Malkin. And again, I mentioned Rust, who has been putting the puck in the back of the net. So it'll be, he's definitely a player I would pick up now. He's definitely available in most leagues. So I would definitely pick that guy up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's that's definitely somebody I look at. And so, it's also interesting too, going back to Tampa Bay, and somebody that I want to throw out there is Alex Killorn. So Andre Palat, actually got to see him play in Norfolk. He was part of the Calder Cup championship team. So it's Alex Killorn. So I've seen these players both play, got to talk with them both, got to know them pretty well. And Killorn is, along with Palat, they're both engines in John Cooper's they're both engines in John Cooper's machine. That's the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they're starting to trend in the right way. So Killorn just popped up, put 2 goals and assist on Tuesday against the Sabres. He's really been getting better and better. I mean, so on the 29th against Detroit, didn't have any points, but on the 28th against Montreal, 2 goals and an assist. The game before that, he had a goal. And so if you go back and you take a look, he's been pretty consistent in putting up points. He had 2 goals, 6 points in October, 4 goals and 11 points in November, 9 goals and 17 points in December. So certainly trending up. He's available in a lot of leagues. Tampa, they're perennial, gonna make it. We've seen them be a powerhouse. So that the skill is there. It seems like they may be coming out of whatever funk they were in. But yeah, so another guy that I would keep my eyes on is Alex Killorn for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Got it. Very good. Very good, sir. Would you like to continue with the story?
Yeah. So, got a couple quick hits here. I actually just have one quick hit, and then I'll throw it back to you. We'll just kind of volley back and forth. So, I want to bring up the World Junior Championships this year. So, again, we're going to talk real quick about it, but the quarterfinal round has been set.
Yep.
So you have basically Switzerland is playing Russia. That's going to be tomorrow. You've got Canada playing Slovakia.
Yep.
The United States against Finland, and Sweden against the Czech Republic. Yep. So, again, there's always, favorites. There's been some upsets. There's been some injuries. There's been some drama. The Canadian captain didn't take his helmet off during the playing of a national anthem. The internet was all abuzz. Again, these are kids with an incredible amount of pressure put on them. They're on the world stage, but certainly it makes for watching some good hockey for a lot of future NHL players and players that are going to go on and really be first and second line players once they hit their NHL teams. Yeah. So now that you're in the quarterfinals, definitely something to start paying attention to. And if you have the chance, I know a lot of the games are being broadcast or streamed, so I highly recommend tuning in, because you're going to see a lot of players there end up in the NHL. One of the favorites that I have is John Gibson, who's a goaltender for the United States. Made his cut his teeth in the World Juniors, and now he's a star in the NHL. So again, you want to really get to know some of the players and see what they've got coming. I would definitely tune in to watch that.
Yes, I would agree, and I think the consolation round there is Germany versus Kazakhstan. On that.
Yeah, I mean, second place, first loser. So
exactly.
I mean, you can definitely go with that. But yeah,
exactly. Very good, sir.
All right, kicking it back to you.
Thank you very much, and I will take that and run with it. I think what I like to maybe do going forward from this broadcast, or even from the last broadcast forward, is try to touch on stories that otherwise aren't getting the media attention, that are a little bit more typical of what you find in grassroots hockey. I mean, listen, you get to some of the minor leagues. I mean, is that really grassroots? No, but still, is it? Are we hearing about it in the mainstream media? No. So there's a lot more stories in hockey that hockey produces that are going on, and a lot more good, I guess, events that we're not hearing about than what we are. And we're only hearing about the top 1%, obviously, because those are the elite players, those are the elite teams. That's where the coverage is. But it's nice to dig up some stories from around the hockeyverse and share it. So we have one which is kind of interesting, which is a team called the Elmira Enforcers. They took the ice against the Danbury Hat-Tricks in a Federal Prospects Hockey League game last Friday evening. And they had 6 players short for their game. 6 players. So the Elmira owner, Robbie Nichols, who was drafted 181st overall by the Flyers back in 1983, currently 55 years old, decided that he was going to suit up.
Well, let's add a little. Let's kind of put some context to this. So
Sure.
Brett Clark, the coach,
Yes.
met with Nichols the morning of the game and said, "Hey, we got a banged up lineup," and so Clark was going to play, and Clark has actually played to fill in the lineup previously.
Yep.
Clark said, "If I'm playing, you're playing," to the owner, right? So Nichols. Obviously, as the owner, he said, "Sure, I'll suit up." But Clark basically went in and said, "If I'm playing, you're playing."
That's exactly right. And what I was just about to say, but you nailed it, man.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Yes. So Nichols, who was drafted in 1983 by the Flyers, he played 420 games in the IHL and 122 in the AHL, winning the Calder Cup with the Adirondack Red Wings in 1989. Not too shabby. Pretty good. Yeah. Had a nice little career there. So he went out, he played, did the full game. They lost, unfortunately, by 1 goal. But it was kind of funny, the interaction between himself and the rest of the team, obviously in the locker room, on the ice, even after the game. He said it was very quiet. Nobody, there's sort of like that unspoken rule. Just nobody talks to the owner. The owner's in the room, in the locker room. All the joking all the ribbing is put aside. It's dead quiet in the locker room prepping for the game. After the game, not many high fives going around or hey, good game or anything. The owner's right there. So he thought that was kind of funny, but he said he felt good after the game on Saturday, and then a little bit more sore on Sunday as the effects set in from a two-handed slash that he was given by one of the opposing players.
Yeah.
That
So
I'm sure left a mark. So
yeah,
good for Robbie Nichols. Truly playing the role of the owner and doing whatever it takes for your investment. And always good to hear things like that happening. And I'm sure it's good for the team, good for the players around him, even players on the opposing team. I'm sure got a good kick out of it.
yeah. Some other funny moments from there, and it's
And actually, just to mention, I'm sorry,
yeah. Go ahead.
I'm
No,
sorry.
go ahead.
One of the players during the game, one of the players on the opposing team came up to him and said that his dad used to play with play with
Yeah,
him
yeah,
decades ago.
yeah. That's great.
So makes
You
you
know,
feel warm and fuzzy.
it does. It does. And I
Yeah.
think there was some discussion about how many decades he played in and whether or not he set a record for or matched some of the older players with the number of decades that he actually
Yeah.
played professional hockey in. Some other funny parts of that story too. So, he basically said, I knew I was going to be sore, just going to take some Advil before the game, Advil after the game. That's good. But he recalled a game back in the 80s where he finished with 6 points, and his pregame meal was a Big Mac and fries. Now, no professional hockey player today is going to tell you that they're never going to admit, and they probably would never eat a Big Mac and fries prior to playing a game. I don't really know any athlete doing anything physical who's going to eat that kind of stuff, just the grease and the stomach and everything else.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But hockey players superstitious. The guy drove to McDonald's, got a Big Mac and fries before the game. So he said in his quotes, he said he had 3 shifts in the first period, didn't do much. Second period started getting his legs, ran over 3 guys, had some good hits, and took a penalty. And I believe he didn't play at all in the third. But he does play pickup. So it's not like he, took the skates down and they were double bladed, or they were the brown boots and everything like that. So certainly, he's kept up with hockey. And for guys like me who play in the beer leagues and things like that, that's pretty. It's a pretty good story. Not just because he's the owner, but just because 55 years old, still has a love of the game, still has an appreciation for the game, able to hit the ice.
Yeah.
So that's great. Love to hear that kind of stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Back to you, sir.
All right. So another interesting story from this week. I want to talk about John Tortorella.
Mm-hmm.
So John Tortorella, who is one of the winningest coaches in United States hockey history, still active coach, and currently is the coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets. He took a fine earlier this week for some comments he made about officials after a game. And so specifically, it was a game earlier this week in a 3-2 shootout against the Chicago Blackhawks. He was fined $20,000 for basically calling out the officials and saying that he thought that they screwed up a whistle and bled off too much time on the clock. That eventually his team would go on to put a goal or put the puck in the net just after time had expired. His argument was, had the time been correctly fixed, the goal would have counted. So what he was really continuing to be upset about was there was no goal in overtime, so the teams went to a shootout. Well, during the shootout, his goaltender, Jonas Korpisalo, suffered a serious knee injury, and the guy's out for a couple months.
Yep.
So they're without their all-star goaltender, and Tortorella was basically saying that, hey, this all could have been avoided if the officials had done their job, put the second and a half back on the clock. The goal would have scored, or the goal would have counted. We wouldn't have had to go to a shootout, and I wouldn't have lost my goaltender.
Right.
So specifically, though, his quote was, all this expletive technology, the technology in getting things right, the stubbornness tonight by the officials and by the league in Toronto, however it's supposed to expletive work, it screws us. It's ridiculous. So he slapped the podium, walked out of the room, didn't take any questions. So they hit him with,
it's.
yeah, go ahead.
I don't. I think he's right, and I'm glad to see the passion from a coach, because that's something as a player or even a fan of a team that you want to see from a coach. And I think if people who didn't know him and knew of his background, coaching background, who just saw this interview for what it was, just, you know, very one dimensional, just watch that. A lot of people wouldn't find anything wrong with it. It was just a passionate coach after a loss. Maybe by using an expletive, oh my goodness. I mean, in the world of hockey, to use, a curse word, geez. But obviously being covered by major media, that's a problem. So,
Well, yeah, he not only called out the on ice officials, he called out the league, he called out Toronto for not stepping in. He made.
But he has a valid argument, and
He does.
I think he's entitled to that valid argument after losing a player and losing a game.
Sure. Well, I've got some history here, but in addition to the $20,000 that he was fined, he has also been assessed a conditional fine of $25,000, which will be collected in the event of similar inappropriate behavior through December 29th of 2020. So the guy's basically on criticizing probation, I guess if you want to call that. So the next time he speaks out, $25,000 will be the next fine. So, reading social media and listening to reporters, nobody has ever heard of a conditional fine. So clearly it's something that the league is looking at. So I like to talk about it, but I want to go back over Tortorella's history when it comes to fines and suspensions. So since he's been in the NHL, he's been fined 9 times and suspended 3 times. And the Athletics' Aaron Portzline, basically he calculated Tortorella's fines to be about $80,000 in total, not including the $25,000 provisional. So looking back at Tortorella's history, and this isn't all of the fines and suspensions, but want to point some of these out. So when he was the head coach at Tampa Bay, during the 2007 Stanley Cup final or Stanley Cup playoffs, this was after Game 5 of the Lightning series against New Jersey Devils. So he's in a press conference. He was disappointed because they lost. He didn't answer any questions directly. He just kept saying, "We know what we did," each time a reporter asked a question. The reporter asked a question, "Hey, what did you think?" Blah, blah. So we know what we did. So New York Post reporter Larry Brooks basically came out and said, "Well, what did you do?" Tortorella didn't explain. So Brooks came back and said, "Are you not answering questions or what?" Tortorella answered he was not going to answer questions. Brooks called the interview a waste of time. So Tortorella then told Brooks to get the expletive out of here live on CBC television. So that's
but you know what? Listen, this is the part that for the hockey fans, we know about him, and I think, we know what he's capable of based on these well covered events and outbursts, but based on to Tortorella standards, that wasn't what happened the other day. Was very mild and very understandable and a lot more relatable to other coaches. So I actually feel from a Tortorella standpoint, my standpoint as a fan toward Tortorella, I thought he handled himself really well.
I think so too. I want to get
amidst
through
the conditions.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But I want to get through a couple more here. So on November 19th, 2007, he was fined $10,000 by the NHL for negative comments he made about the on-ice officials in a 4-3 overtime loss to the Atlanta Thrashers. So he leaves Toronto, goes to the Rangers. And of course, as to your point, the Rangers know what they're getting when it comes to Tortorella. He won a Stanley Cup with Tampa Bay. So certainly he has some credentials there to bring with him. So with the Rangers, he was suspended 1 game by the NHL for an altercation with several Capitals fans behind the bench in the 3rd period of Game 5 in the 2009 Stanley Cup playoffs. So you go back through and you look at the replays, and they show a fan was heckling Tortorella. So Tortorella basically threw a water bottle at the fan, grabbed a stick from one of his players, and tried to spear the fan through a space between the 2 panes of glass. So, I mean, yeah.
What are we getting at here, though?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, so let me keep going here. So next one, November 4th, 2009, um, there was disciplinary action against him in a game between the Rangers and the Canucks, where the Rangers forward was suspended for a game. Head coach John Tortorella was fined $10,000. January 4th of 2012, he was fined $30,000 for comments made following a game against the Philadelphia Flyers.
We're going to be here a while with this.
No, we're not. But I think it establishes a pattern, and I want to talk about the coach's ability to criticize the league. So just let me get through this because I think
the pattern. But the pattern, everything you just mentioned, was based on a bit more of emotional and physical recklessness.
This story that I'm getting
into. He went after coaches in the walkway.
Yeah.
Where he had to be pulled off by other players. I mean,
there's
an emotional and physical recklessness, and last night there wasn't.
So you're right. So this story that this instance I'm going to talk about now really goes to reinforce your point about what he did the other day. So January 4th, 2012, he was fined $30,000 for comments made against the game against the Philadelphia Flyers. So he was asked about the officiating, which as a reporter or prior reporter that I used to do, you never ask about the officials because typically coaches don't respond because of fines and things like that. So whoever asked the question obviously was setting him up, but knew there was going to be a response. So he's asked about the officiating in the third period. The Rangers won 3-2. And Tortorella called it disgusting. So the setup is in the last 5 minutes, the Rangers were penalized 3 times, one for delay of game, one for holding the stick, and one for covering the puck in the crease, the latter of which led to a Philadelphia penalty shot with 20 seconds left. So Tortorella says, maybe the referees wanted to get it to an overtime. I'm not sure if they have meetings about that or what. So clearly, and the Rangers owner at the time, or the GM at the time, also spoke out and said, hey, 3 times in the last 5 minutes of a game, that's a bit excessive, right? Like what's going on here? Why would they do something like that? That's not normal. So clearly he was onto something, just as he was onto something, to your point, in that game against Columbus. Just going through April 6th of 2012, he was fined $20,000 for comments he made following a game at Pittsburgh. Where he basically called out the Penguins for whining, diving, called Pittsburgh one of the most arrogant organizations in the league. There was a knee-on-knee hit that Brooks Orpik laid on his player, Derek Stepan. And then he said, I wonder what would happen if we did it to their 2 whining stars over there. Then he said, they'll whine about something else over there, won't they, starting with their 2 expletive stars. So clearly there's an emotional aspect to his game. And the last one that I want to point out here, which is one that you brought up. So when he was in his only year as head coach of the Vancouver Canucks, during the first intermission of a game on January 18th, 2014, he entered the Calgary Flames dressing room area in an attempt to confront Flames coach Bob Hartley. After a line brawl in the opening seconds of the first period, Tortorella angrily attempted to confront Hartley, accusing him of starting a lineup with the intent to injure a Canucks player. He had to be physically restrained by several players and coaches. He was suspended for 15 days without pay, barring him from being in contact with the team during his suspension. So, yeah, so clearly there's an emotional aspect. But I got to tell you, as a player, I appreciate having a coach who's going to stick up for the players and for the organization and who's going to call it like you see it. Now, I'm not advocating trying to spear fans through the glass. Certainly not advocating.
But
Go ahead.
Let me throw this in here.
Yeah.
And this is why maybe I'm a little off with this direction, I should say.
Okay.
Is that I'm not even going to count last night as something like a Tortorella moment, because I could see any coach. I've seen other coaches have worse moments than that in the last few months. I mean,
sure.
Let's not even count last night. When was the last really bad Tortorella moment you can remember?
There really hasn't been one.
Exactly. So my point is,
it's been a couple years. Yeah.
The guy was fiery at one point in his career. Had trouble, but he's gotten it under control, and he's doing a good job, and he's presenting himself in the organization well. And I think he deserves the lack of media attention on his past because of his turnaround in recent years. So it's almost like I feel like it's a little unfair to revisit something that we could bring it up in 80 years if we wanted to, but there's no reason to. Like, he's doing a good job now.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And to your point, when criticism, and this kind of gets into the discussion that I want to have. So why is it that coaches are, and players, really, to be honest with you, even owners, let's owners, GMs, coaches, players, are unable to criticize officiating in the NHL without being fined? So, we kind of, and there's two sides to every issue. Certainly, the NHL isn't going to want to see its officials undermined. It certainly, wants to be solid with its rules and its enforcement of rules and things like that. So calls on the ice, those types of things. But at the end of the day, shouldn't players and coaches and GMs and owners be able to speak their minds and say, hey, look, just like Tortorella did, like, there was a screw up here and it had some major ramifications, and something needs to be done? Because let's be honest, how does change come about? It comes about in the court of public opinion, and when there's pressure put on organizations by external forces to make those changes.
Because the public are not the one, that's not who is making the rules and regulations within the NHL, right? It's the officials, it's the team owners, it's people within the league. So when you take these grievances public, it doesn't create anything good. So I can understand why they would want to internalize things and be able to discuss them among the people who actually make the decisions. It brings no positive attention or publicity or anything to the league when you discuss these things without having everyone talk about it afterwards. Once again, this is a business, right? And you have to present, and the NHL as a league is a business the same way any particular team is a business. So the NHL has to run the league in a way that it's almost like Disney, right? The way Disney handles any accident that happens on any of their grounds is quickly addressed. Attorneys are on it. There's no publicity. People are, sign non-disclosure agreements. Things are settled behind closed doors, usually for very large sums of money.
Sure.
And everything's kept quiet to keep the appearance of Disney spick and span. Perfect, right? So it's kind of like that with the NHL. And I don't blame them for doing so, because you really don't need the public input into why people internally within the NHL are criticizing their own organization, right? And I think those things need to be handled internally, and I don't think there's any positive press that comes from something like that. And I get it. At the same time, it would help on the NHL end if maybe through social media they were to address things, and sometimes things are addressed, and sometimes information is leaked to press as a response to public sort of like public opinion that's being expressed in social media. So you see a lot of things being pushed out by reporters that are close to NHL brass. So I think in this specific situation, I get it. I don't think he was. I think they were maybe a little bit tough in the fine department, and I think that comes from his reputation from years back, which is unfortunate, number one. Or number two, it's because everyone's a little bit trigger happy based on all the other coaching-related stories that have been going on in the last 3-4 months, right? And so they're looking to squash something before it becomes another big publicity deal. But I think either way, I get it. Maybe they went a little too far. It's Tortorella. Everyone gets a little itchy when it's Tortorella saying something. But I get why they would want to internalize it and want, not want to have an NHL representative bashing their own organization.
So now let me kind of go in maybe a different direction here. So the NHL is known for, or I shouldn't say known for. Um, the players are kind of seen as being very low key. When they're interviewed, a lot of the answers are canned.
Right.
There isn't a lot of emotion, and of course, when you get players who demonstrate any kind of emotion on the ice, a lot of times the guys who have been around the league for a long time, they take them to town, right?
Right.
They really tear them up. Oh, we don't need that kind of stuff. So, bunch of jerks in Carolina, right, for
Right.
engaging the fans and really kind of displaying some emotion and not just being the robotic
Yeah, but
cookie
they
cutter
were only
answers.
bashed by one person for that.
Well, that's true. That's true. I guess my
Just one
point here,
person.
though, that's one person. But I can tell you, there are a lot of people who
And he
felt
no
the
longer
same
has a
way.
job.
He does no longer have a job, but there are a lot of people that kind of feel that way. They don't like to see that kind of emotion, and so I kind of wonder. I absolutely agree, right? You don't want dissension in the ranks. The NHL has to tighten up, circle the wagons, defend its process, defend its officials, especially when Tortorella went after Toronto, which is essentially league headquarters. He made statements to that effect.
Right.
But I guess my point here, though, is and kind of going along the lines that you said, did the fine need to be that excessive? Could the league just release a statement and said, "Hey, look, this is why the call was or wasn't made," which they did. The NHL actually came out and said, "Hey, this was our process. This is why we did what we did." But to say, like, "Hey, we don't agree with what Tortorella said," but I guess sometimes I see these fines. Hear me out. So sometimes I see these fines and these reactions. Almost as if it's stifling any kind of emotion. And I got to be honest with you, I would prefer a little bit of honesty, especially when when a player or a coach feels strongly about something and it's in their minds. I would kind of prefer to see some of that honesty as opposed to him just going up to the podium, or really any coach,
Listen,
and not being able to address the elephant in the room, because
if he could have been
obviously,
honest without and phrased it differently and avoided fines.
I got to tell you. So
You know what I'm saying?
in the
But I'm
interviews
not.
that
Once again, I'm not faulting him. I get where he
yeah,
came from in that situation, but I also
but
get the NHL's position.
well, the interviews that I've done, and again, talking with coaches and players, it's a setup question to ask about officiating, because you're not going to get the answers you're looking for. But there have been some players who are like, well, hey, that's not what I saw. That's not how I would have called it.
Right.
There's been answers like that.
Right.
But again, you're talking about the elephant in the room where it's blatant. And again, and this is, we're kind of focusing on this one situation. And Tortorella came out and he apologized and he said, I was wrong and I should have handled it differently. But again, I don't know that I would like to see the kind of excessive blowback to include a $25,000 provisional,
Right.
or excuse me, conditional fine if
Right.
he decides to speak out again, because I want to see a coach get excited. I mean,
Right.
coaches are on the bench and they're constantly chirping at the refs and they're using language. I mean, you watch any broadcast where the camera pans right to the coach and is, "You expletive this, you piece of expletive," whatever. They're constantly doing that. And so that's being broadcast. I mean, again, there needs to be some sort of medium, or maybe not quite the excessive blowback whenever a coach or a player makes a statement that's critical of the game. And maybe you're right.
You know
Maybe it
what?
is how they express it.
I get
But
your point. I
yeah,
understand your point, and I think you're right. And it would be nice. I think, however, there is an in between. And I think we need to learn. I think everyone has kind of been conditioned over the years to those canned responses, especially from the players in the locker room after a game. Oh, you know what? It was a team effort out there. We're just, focused on, buying into the system that the coaches put forth and what we're working on in practice. We're just taking everything one game at a time. I mean, there's a million of those phrases that we've heard over and over and over,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I think it's there has to be an in between, and I think players, and it's on both sides. The players and reporters have to learn how to ask different questions, and the players have to learn how to address a little differently. But I absolutely, no matter what that is, I absolutely understand. You got to remember, these teams are owned by anybody, meaning anyone who is interested in buying a hockey team, if they have the funds and they're vetted properly by the NHL, can be approved to buy a hockey team. So I come into a fortune tomorrow. I come up with hundreds of millions of dollars, and I decide I'm going to buy a team. Right? I'm going to buy the Detroit Red Wings and turn them around, and then I'm going to sink a couple $1 billion into that chore. Right? So, but number one is based on where they are now, and based on where the organization is and where the current state, I know that I'm going to want to put and present the most professional product on the ice and in that arena, and make sure that the fans are experiencing and getting a sense of that level of professionalism being put forth. It's a product that I want as an owner. I want the most professional staff. I want the most professional, players. Look at Lou Lamoriello. He doesn't let players. He's the GM. He doesn't let the players grow their hair longer than a quarter of an inch. He's like, if you have a beard, it's gone. You have long hair, chop it off. I mean, this is what he says. But he's, that's the way he wants to run it. He's the GM. But owners, if I'm an owner, I want the most professional product on the ice. So, and in turn, I want the NHL. I understand they want the teams to be running things a certain way. I get it. So the players, listen. I would want the players to be able to say, if I'm an owner, and I don't think it's just players being careful what they're saying because they're worried about league blowback, but also by their owner. I mean, we've heard it before where players have said something and they're pulled into the owner's office or the coach's office or the GM's office. So they're getting reprimanded across the board from many different sources, people above them. So, but I get it. It's a business. And I think this conversation crosses that line that we so easily forget is there, which is that we have people in hockey uniforms, in athletic uniforms, that are performing in the realm of a business. It might as well be an office, right? So it's a business, and they're wearing athletic uniforms, not a suit and a tie. So this is where things cross over, and it's easy to kind of blur those lines or forget that or whatever.
I've had this very conversation. Sitting at work talking about kneeling during NFL games, and so not gonna dive into that. But to your point, I've argued the exact same point that you're making, which is when you have the uniform on, you represent the organization, and you will abide by the organization's rules and regulations. And so, yeah, I mean, I understand. I guess I just, Torts wasn't wrong. I think he probably got smacked a little harder because of his history, especially with the conditional fine that they've already put in place. And basically as a warning, like, hey, we're not going to put up with this stuff anymore from you. Right. But, again, at the same time, and maybe it just needs to be, maybe the league during the next owners meeting, they need to sit around and talk about how they're going to handle situations like this, because you said it in the beginning. He wasn't out of line. He didn't attack reporters. He basically called out the process, and was upset because I don't think so much from the loss, but because he lost his goaltender. And let's face it, Columbus is struggling. And so anything that's going to work against him, he's going to be upset about. So, it's a good discussion. I'm glad we had it. And I think it's important really to kind of talk about this stuff, because again, we're watching from the outside. We do forget that it's a business. We do forget that they have to present themselves in a manner that's conducive to the business image. But also, I think that we also have to remember that these guys are human. They have emotion. They get jacked up for these games. They get emotionally invested in the games. Their coaching, their jobs, their livelihoods are dependent upon the results of games. So yeah, I mean, I like to see some emotion come out of these guys, and I think it's fair for the league to take criticism. But you're right. Maybe the method needs to change a little bit, or the wording needs to change. So, yeah, I don't want to kick the horse anymore. I'm sure that he's going to pay his fine. So that there's actually a GoFundMe that fans have started to contribute money to his organization, Tortorella's organization. And so the fans are embracing him, certainly. He wasn't really out of line with his message. It was his delivery, I think, really is what this boils down to.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I mean, I applaud him for sticking up for his team, for calling out something that he saw was wrong. And you know what? Hopefully some folks at the league kind of go back and look like, hey, you know what? He was right. Maybe we do need to change some things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I hope, and that's all you can kind of take away from that. And well said, Scotty. But I think when all said and done, hopefully they just don't go through the process. They actually review what's actually happened and say, can we improve from this? On both sides, so good story.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Okay. Scores and schedules for tomorrow, Thursday, January 2nd. We'll just do one day. It's a big schedule tomorrow. We have Blue Jackets at the Bruins.
Well, I mean, you would have seen Korpisalo in the net for Columbus. He's not there anymore. I think Boston's gonna take this one. I mean, it's at Boston. I definitely think it's going to be Boston's game.
I would agree, sir. Bruins at home, strong team, strong home arena. Yes, Bruins. Oilers at the Sabres.
Yeah, I mean, so the Oilers, they ended 2019 in a playoff spot. The Sabres are putting some points up on the net, but I think, or points up on the board, but I think Edmonton's probably going to pull this one out.
Yeah, I agree with you. Sabres are a little thin through the lines. So I'm going with Oilers. Lightning at the Canadiens.
This one's going to be a 50-50. You never know which, really for both teams, which team you're going to get. So who are you going to go with? Because I'll go with the other. We'll just split it.
I know, right? I'm going to go Canadiens.
All right, then I'll go for Tampa.
Okay. Devils at the Islanders.
I think the Isles. It's at the Coliseum.
It's at the barn. Yep.
Yep. I think the Islanders are going to take this. This is NBC Sportsnet, so it'll be a national broadcast. So I think it'll be a good game to tune into. But yeah, I think the Islanders are going to take this one pretty easily.
I want to say it's so bad that the Islanders are going to take this easily, but in the last week and a half, losing to the Ducks at home in the barn and then losing to the Blackhawks, it's scary because if this was someone else coming in, if this was another team like the Blues coming to the Islanders, I'd be like, oh, the Islanders are going to kill them at home because they're going to get fired up. They're going to have the barn. But it's the Devils. So it's almost like I feel like everyone gets a little complacent. They're like, oh, it's the Devils. We got this. And then it becomes a closer game than it needs to be. However, because it is at the barn, it's just that does play a factor with the Islanders. So I'm going to go with the Islanders.
Yeah, I mean, so the other thing, too, with all these teams and all these games, there's been a pause, right? So there's been a pause. The teams have had a couple days off. They've had some time to practice. They've had some time to refocus. And so I think that's going to work. I think we're going to see the Islanders going to string some wins together here in the next couple weeks.
Yes.
I think they'll be okay.
Especially when you have players, like we discussed earlier, when you have players who are injured and other players have an opportunity, I tend to feel that fires up the team. You got these young guys fighting for a position, showing the coaches what they can do, and it fires up the other players on the team. So Islanders over the Devils, yes.
Yep.
Sharks at the Penguins.
So this is going to be a tough one.
At Penguins, at Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's at Pittsburgh.
What part of this is going to be tough for the Penguins?
Well, so their most consistent player, Jake Gensel, is out of the lineup. He logged a bunch of minutes, top power play. They're still, the injuries are still running through. Crosby's not back yet. So lines are going to be juggled. We don't know if there's going to be chemistry. I think it's going to be a close game. I think Jari's going to steal a couple points. I'm going to go with Pittsburgh over San Jose.
I think Pittsburgh's going to do it. I understand what's going on with that lineup, but I still think they're going to take out the Sharks. So I think they're solid enough and deep enough. Panthers at the Senators.
I'm going to go with Florida. I mean, Florida's, they're right in the thick of things. They've got 45 points. They're just a point behind Tampa Bay. That whole mess of teams right in there. I think Florida's gonna take
Yeah,
this, and
I'm
I
with
gotta
you. I'm
tell
with the
you,
Panthers on that one. Yep.
I mean, so it depends. Ottawa played a dirty game against Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
and I think that maybe if that's going to be their brand of hockey for the remaining
They've been
season,
dirty in a lot of games this season. I don't know
yeah,
what the heck, man.
um,
They're just they. I've seen a lot of dirtiness out of that team this whole season.
yeah. So I think Florida. I think they're going to capitalize on the power play if the officiating's good, and they call Ottawa for their cheap stuff,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Maple Leafs at the Jets.
Again, you never know which Maple Leafs team you're going to get, but they are trending up. I think the Leafs are going to take that.
I'm going to go Jets on that one. Rangers at the Flames.
Ah, um, man, that's going to be
Flames beat the
Calgary.
Blackhawks the other day
Yeah,
at home.
Calgary's lost two in a row. Um,
Oh no, I'm sorry. They lost to the Blackhawks at
yep,
home the other day. That's what I
yep.
meant to say.
So it's at Calgary. The Rangers
Yep.
are, yeah. I think that road trip's gonna. I'm gonna go with Calgary. I think Calgary's gonna pull that one out.
Yeah, I'll go Calgary. Ducks at Coyotes.
So Arizona's, they're right up there in the Pacific. 48 points. They're second place in the Pacific. I think they've got a good thing going. I think they're starting to heat up. Um, but again, if John Gibson's in net and he has a good night, stands on his head, he gives Anaheim a chance to win every game. So toss up here, but I think Arizona's probably going to pull that one out.
I'm with you on that one. Blues Avalanche. Ooh.
Man, another great game. Again, another national broadcast game.
Well, the last one we had, Blues won that one, and it was in Colorado, and this is another one.
It's in Colorado.
That's in Colorado.
Yeah.
It was a great game. That was a couple weeks ago. I remember watching that one. It should have been closer
Yeah.
than what it was. I remember the score was there was a Blues I think won by a couple goals, but
Yeah,
it's just a good matchup.
Yeah, and both goalies. Jake Allen put on a good show the other day, and he's getting some good play in front of him. But I'm gonna go with Colorado. I'm gonna go with Colorado on that one. I
I'll
think they're
go
gonna win at
Colorado
home.
also.
Yeah.
Blackhawks, the Canucks. The last couple times I've bet against the Blackhawks, I've lost, so I'm going to go with Blackhawks on this
All
one.
right. I'm gonna stick with Vancouver.
Yeah. Flyers at the Golden Knights. Ooh, interesting.
That one's gonna be another good one. That one's gonna be another good one. Philadelphia has been climbing the standings. They're 5-5-0 in their last 10. Vegas again, top in the Pacific. They've won two in a row. I think they're riding high. I think they're going to continue to ride high. I think it's a safe bet to go with Vegas on that one. Plus, they're playing at home in Vegas.
Yep. I would agree with you, sir. I'm going to go with that one. I think it's going to be a fun game either way, though. That's a tight one.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I just want to throw it out there. If there's anybody that's currently live, has any last minute questions or comments they want to throw out there, please let us know. Just throw it right up there in the chat.
Nope, just the crickets are out there.
Yeah, just the crickets. Fair enough. Yeah.
Very good, sir. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well done. Good chats, and we are good. We will return this Sunday, which is the 5th. So we'll see everybody at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah,
and as always, go ahead, sir.
I would say I do have an alibi. So we talk about fantasy hockey players to pick up. Chris Kreider for the Rangers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I would definitely pick him up. So he's going to be sought after as we approach a trade deadline. If you have teams that have injuries and they're looking for straight line speed, he's going to be a guy. So the Rangers are definitely going to trade him. It's just a question of the who. So if he's available in your league, I would definitely pick him up.
Very good. All right. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Once again, you can catch 2L Pucks on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, our Gmail, 2lpucks@gmail.com. Any questions, comments, suggestions? Best way to reach us is probably just message us on Twitter. and say hi or give us an email. But always accessible, always fun to do this. And we'll see everybody again this Sunday, the 5th, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you very much, and hope everyone has a good evening.